This is our Aftershow show, and I'd like to take this opportunity to look back at our 12 episodes and reflect a little bit about the story we've created, the world, the characters, and maybe how this story fits into the genre of supernatural thrillers. So, Zoe, I know you've worked a lot and have a lot of experience with this genre of supernatural thrillers, and understanding that this story is about angels and demons. What do you think the impact on the audience will be, considering the lack of preponderance of religious references? For example, except for a fleeting reference by Angela, no one really refers to the entity by name. In fact, Joph refuses to personalize it with a name. That's sort of different for this kind of genre, isn't it?
Yeah, but I do think that makes the story more universal, which is one of the things that I think is compelling about that. Also, as somebody who's like written horror and struggled with it, especially when I was starting out, you don't always want to know too much about an evil force, or depending on what the genre is, a killer, or like the sort of antagonist in a horror, because you need that sense of suspense and mystery to keep the audience guessing and wondering. And it does sort of like exemplify the show don't tell rule with writing, where if you over explain or over prescribe sort of meaning to something, not necessarily just meaning, but like a specific framework, I think it allows for less personalization from the audience. Like the audience can impose their experience more on something that's not as explicitly like named. So I think it's compelling because it also it does make the themes more universal. It's a story ultimately about good versus evil, and there's nothing that's more universal than that.
I think you're right. I think the element of discovery for the audience is very important. And I think you're right. It's a balancing act, isn't it? Because how much do you reveal and how much do you leave for people to think about, to consider, to, it's from the standpoint of you want the audience to discover things as we go along, but you do want to have enough of a payoff so that people leave satisfied, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think no really great horror that I've ever seen explains everything. It's like you said, it explains kind of just enough that you feel like you understand enough, or you get that sort of payoff of satisfaction. I think a good example of that is like Weapons does that really well. I won't spoil anything about Weapons, but they throw a lot of questions up in the air, and they definitely don't answer all of them, but you get enough answers that by the end of it, you're like, okay, I think I understand why all of that happened. You feel sort of satisfied with an explanation.
Yeah, now I wanted to quiz Tayla a little bit about that, because I was particularly struck, Tayla, when you gave me your first feedback about the story. And for me, it was particularly gratifying that you sort of zeroed in on the satisfying nature of the ending.
I'm trying to remember the ending right now. I'm like used to the podcast.
I mean, not to give too many spoilers.
I'm like, I have like the podcast script in my head. I'm like, I forget this is a full-length feature film. Hang on a second. Right. I'm like, what? But no, I remember. Yeah, I'm like, there's nothing more, especially like being someone that studied film. I think, yes, a film can be great without a satisfying ending, but do we really want to go see a movie if like the bad guys win in the end? I don't know. I don't think in the world we're living, I think it's nice to have an experience watching a film that might be horrific throughout and moving and this and that, but knowing that like our protagonist, without any spoilers, it has some sort of a redeeming sort of ending. We can cut this if we don't want to spoil it. But it's more like a satisfying thing. I know personally, like I don't want to really sit through a horror film where the characters really have no sort of ending and like from being good in a way. If the bad only wins, then it's like, who wants to see that? Because that's a sad ending to it. And yeah, I think this film really like comes to a close in a way that's satisfying for the viewer, peaceful for the viewer, despite a lot of the film being very full on for this poor character. But at least it's a good ending for him, which we like. But yeah,
I'm glad you said that because in the scenes that we've covered,
yes.
The prospect of a positive ending is not clear on the basis of what we've seen and heard so far. We know that Joph has got many challenges ahead of him, but there is sort of a glimmer of hope in the presence of the mysterious woman. Would you agree with that, John?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we were talking about the scene where Diego, right, and the mysterious women are introduced, and like, what a world-breaking revelation for Joph, right? That there are two other people who might be like him, and this sort of self-imposed loneliness. I mean, think about all the questions, right? Like maybe that need not occur any longer. Maybe we can team up against this thing and defeat it. But also, like, you know, what else could this relationship be? Is it a friendship? Is it like just a common goal, like almost like coworkers? Is it romantic? I assume that he hasn't had a romantic relationship since Crystal, out of fear of, you know, someone he loves dying. So does that allow for that possibility? It asks a lot of questions that, like Zoe was saying, we get answers to a lot of them, but some of it, and this is good, is world building, right? It's like, what is the world of these angels and demons and the people caught in between?
Right, and that's a good point. You raise a very good point, because in one moment he learns that there are two people who have a similar sensitivity to evil. Mm-hmm. One is immediately dispatched, and the other one is in immediate danger.
Yeah.
So it really, it's like, you're right. It's sort of mixed emotions. It's like, oh, there's a glimmer of hope, but oh boy, there's a real problem here. So Zoe, I was going to ask you, and I'm particularly interested in your thoughts on this. How is it if you're doing a supernatural thriller on this level, I get the impression that it's almost pro forma that the ending is going to be either mixed or up in the air or negative. How does that feel within the genre, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is typical, in not just even outside of sort of spiritual horror, just horror in general. You very rarely have a horror where there's like a true good ending in the genre. That almost, I'm thinking now, I'm like racking my brain and going, have I ever actually seen that? And I'm trying to come up with something, and I'm not. I mean, I've definitely, I see a lot. All my favorite horror movies, I guess I should say, have sort of a mixed or more, at least like some hope in the ending. I'm not the biggest fan of like, you know, just terror, sadness, grief, and then it ends in like horror. Like, I like the horror genre, I really do. But there are some things like stuff like Midsommar, for instance, is like I roll my eyes a little bit, but that's okay. That's personal preference. But I guess if you're looking at like the genre of like horror comedy, which this very much isn't, you sometimes see that, although sometimes that feels very unearned and cheap. I'm working on that in a horror comedy that I've written, which is the ending is kind of a mess. And like a little bit of it is because it just kind of is like, they're happy now. So I don't know. I think there's a reason for that trope in the genre. Because these stories are complicated. And in real life, when you experience something as traumatic as like what Joph is experiencing sort of perpetually throughout this story, you don't usually come out of it in like this 80s movie montage of like, well, now everything's great. Like, that's just not usually how it happens. But that being said, I think the best endings and the best stories offer a glimmer of hope. I think that's one of the reasons that we tell stories, and that we're a species that's so focused on communicating our stories, is because we want to learn from our ideas and make meaning of our experiences. And I think the best meaning that you can make of anything is to have hope. And that, I think that's also kind of a spiritual thing in and of itself. Like hope to me feels connected to spirituality as well.
Yeah, interesting. And sort of expanding on that a little bit, talking about the world. One of the themes that intrigues me about this story is that we're talking about demons and possessed people and that sort of thing, but Joph only uses brute force to expel the demon from possessed people, or to end a direct attack on him personally. So does that imply anything in particular? Will people notice that? I mean, he's not chanting anything. He's not evoking any divine name. He's literally just using brute force to at least temporarily vanquish this demon. What sort of effect on the story and the characters and the audience do you think that has?
I mean, I think it's powerful that there aren't magic words that make the pain go away. It's this sort of physicalization of the spiritual, where he has to use the brute force. Feels to me like a metaphor for like indomitable will. It's less about having sort of the right words or reading from a book. Like, it is a physical, brutal thing that he has to go through and exert force. And it also, I don't know, it's this literal grueling thing that I think feels more earned than just saying, abracadabra and some sort of like that. That feels very like a very cheap way to say it, but you know what I mean? Like, there isn't like a special sort of magic poof and then this thing is gone. And I think that's much more interesting. Yeah.
John, this is a question for John and Tayla. I sort of leapfrogging on that thought. There's two things that seem to be happening here, as Zoe just said. There is all of these characters, both Angela and Joph, have an indomitable will to go forward regardless of what happens. But of course, Angela has a unique experience in that she's flashing back to something that happened to her that she survived. Joph is moving forward knowing full well that this thing can kill him at any time. So I guess the question that I have for you, Tayla, and actually for you, John, is how do you feel that the characters are sort of centered and driven in the same way, that they understand their peril, but they also understand that they have some capability to respond? Tayla, what do you think?
Well, it's funny enough, in a way, like in an unfortunate way, although Angela has had this experience with this demonic force or whatever in the past, in a way, her death sadly allows Joph to figure it out on his own, because despite her knowing about it all and stuff, she's not really like a hopeful figure. Like, she's quite, like, even on the beach scene with Gabe and her, it's like she's still thinking there's no hope and this and that, and Gabe's trying to like keep the peace and it's all fine. And so she's very negative this whole time and sort of sees that there's only a negative end. And so in an unfortunate way, her leaving the story takes that away from Joph, and in a way he has to sort of find his own, and then in doing that he sort of like has no choice but to try and figure out a way how to defeat this and continue with his journey. But it leaves it more hopeful in a way. So although she's trying to be a caring mother trying to look after her child, she brings like a less hopeful vibe to it. I don't know. It's unfortunate, mm-hmm. But yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What are your thoughts, John?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking a lot about, I think, hope, and I think you could probably make an argument that at the sort of beginning of the film, Joph doesn't have much hope. He must have some hope. I mean, there's something there because he's still alive and fighting in some capacity. But it seems to me that he's largely almost fighting this thing like pretty frightened. He's not on the offensive. He's not, I mean, he could, in theory, be, poring over religious texts, trying to use his intellect to figure this thing out, but he seems to have retreated to the margins. And I would say that, like, part of his journey is moving from fear for himself, fear for others, fear for the world, fear for the galaxy, fear for the gods, to finding hope and finding that there is maybe a way to get himself and others out of this. And I think a lot of the characters he meets throughout his sort of journey there, but also some of the seeds planted by, some of the Act 1 characters, like his mom, actually, I think end up giving him hope. So even if sorry, Tayla, even if that character has no hope, she is functioning in this way that, like, it misses a generation, I guess. That ends up being a critical part of Joph's journey to find hope. And he, the old screenplay thing, like, why is this day unlike any other kind of thing? Like, he gets in these circumstances and meets other people, this one other mysterious woman who, both help him find that hope and provide some necessary logistics to maybe do something more than just, fight like a dog in a corner.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I tried to write the character in a way that we would see, a range of emotions. Mm-hmm. Number one, he's driven primarily by revenge.
Sure.
And he knows physically he can combat this thing to some degree or another. But he sees that this entity does have the ability to kill at will. And I think Joph is a stubborn guy. I think he's a stubborn guy. He's hard-headed. He's full of anger. But when it comes down to it, in the hotel room with the Burning Man sequence, when this thing is hovering over him and burning him, and it looks like the end, does he give up? Does he, it's like, okay, I've done what I can, do what you will kind of attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting that sort of vibe from him?
Yeah, for sure. That's sort of what I mean, is he's definitely not, even though he may outwardly appear like he maybe no longer has like the will to live, but I think it's different than that. I think that it's, I think there's maybe a little bit of arrogance to it as well. Like, he has survived this many times. He doesn't know all the rules quite of this cosmic thing, but he knows that historically he has been able to physically get his way out of it, and either been able to push back enough to keep the sort of demons at bay, or the demons aren't ready to kill him yet. So I think that, like, he's learning by trial and error a lot, right? Like, but yeah, for sure motivated by, well, I mean, you can make, I guess you could say that, like, revenge is being motivated by events of the past. Hope is being motivated by possibilities of the future. So maybe that's a better way of sort of framing that arc, is that he moves out of his past and into looking ahead and trying to figure out how to fight from that angle rather than from living in the past.
What about resignation? I'm seeing this in both Angela and periodically with Joph. Are you getting that is, at the moment of crisis, something that's happening?
At different moments, yes and no. I mean, I think I can only assume that coming face to face with a demonic entity would bring up a pretty wide array of emotions. And I'm sure that, my God, I feel like resignation would probably be at the forefront of mine. It's be like, well, I'm screwed. So I think that that's surely part of the soup, but, never enough to just fully, there's always that sort of second wind that seems to come. So yeah, whether that comes from a place of stubbornness or anger or like just pure passion and grit, I think that's a little bit up for, an audience to determine what exactly is like at the sort of core of it.
Right. So Tayla, how will you expand upon this issue? Is Angela resigned to her fate, or is she just fearful, or what is her response really just one dimensional? Is she just resigned to it, or is she just on pins and needles waiting for something to happen?
I think it's more like it's not only an inner battle dealing with whatever PTSD she has from prior experiences, but I feel like she's also battling with, her husband is sort of telling her to stay calm about it all and keeping the peace. So it's like she feels like she's the only one sort of worried about it. And I imagine she's going a little bit insane. So it's a battle with people around her not seeing the seriousness of it, and an inner battle of maybe she's thinking, oh, you don't need to worry about this. Like, it's not going to be the same with him and blah, blah, blah. So I don't think she's purposely like resigning from the worrying, but she's kind of having no choice in doing it because, yeah, as I said, everyone else is not letting her figure it out more and like be worried. They're sort of like shutting down the worriedness. She's trying to shut it down within herself. So if she is resigning, it's not her own doing. I think she's just maybe seeing that keeping the peace about it all might help it go away, but we don't know. So I think that's her only way of coping with it, I suppose.
Yeah. So, Zoe, circling back to what you were talking about earlier about the whole issue of discovery, considering the title of the film and the extensive Christian mythology around angel hierarchy, to what degree is it relevant to bypass explanations and simply observe that the evil entity finds it important enough to physically and psychologically attack our protagonist in such a determined and prolonged way?
I mean, I think you don't want something that's as like engaging and entertaining as this to feel like a history lesson. So you do risk, like, if you get too deep into mythology, I think there is a risk of losing an audience in terms of feeling like, well, I feel like I'm maybe being lectured at a little bit here, when really the story and the core of the mythology that you're referencing, even just sort of lightly referencing, is about how this entity feels that Joph is important enough to attack him. It's, that tells you, it does really tell you everything that you need to know. The scale of the entity's obsession with Joph is the story and the core of what we need to know about how important Joph is as well. Yeah, and I think it's also, if there's this force that's this focused on breaking this like one man, it does sort of indicate that Joph might be, he's at least a high level threat to this entity, and so that I do think, you don't need to sort of like, the audience is smart, right? And they will pick up on that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Is Joph a threat or an opportunity?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it would depend on how you sort of personally read it. I do think that you can read it either way. I think potentially the more hopeful outlook is that he's maybe a threat that the entity considered to be an opportunity, and maybe it's messing around with the wrong guy. So yeah, I think there's a little mystery in that as well.
I just want to thank everybody for participating in this. It's a great discussion. I really look forward to expanding this as we move forward with the project. I'm inclined to believe that our audience is very excited about knowing trying to find out what's going to happen next to our protagonist and the mysterious woman and all the characters that he's going to run into. And I think we'll leave it open at that, and we'll look forward to adding more episodes to our podcast as we get further into our production process. And I would say to you and to our audience, thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for more about the production of our film, The Seraphim. Thanks. Bye-bye, everybody.